Okay. So I don't know as far as like how the Zoom works when as I'm switching apps, but you might not be able to see me while I am in the document. But so it looks like for the top section, cranial screening process, bone by bone. For each bone, gently contact or challenge the bone. Hold for 5 to 10 seconds. Retest the indicator. If it strengthens, that cranial bone is likely a driver. If not, move on. I think that this is a highly subjective and potentially erroneous use of an indicator. Um, and the reason for that is that an indicator is going to respond to an autonomic state, but in limbic resonance, you have to establish what that response even means. So, for example, when I use limbic resonance and I use my indicator, which for me and my body is my thumb, and I put my hand on something, I could be asking, is this parasympathetic? And the answer would be yes, right? Or I could be asking, is this bone a primary driver? And the answer could be yes. And those are two completely different meanings, but I still got a yes, right? So you have to, in your nervous system, establish exactly what does this indicator even mean? Now, even that requires a lot, I mean, that implies a level of subjectivity, right? I personally try to erase as much subjectivity as possible from my work. I want to make sure that my nervous system is not just making guesses or approximations or making up stories about the nervous system that it is seeing, right? I want my nervous system to just be curious and observational. I don't want to influence the other nervous system with my projections, right? So instead, I'm interested in reading an autonomic response from the proprioception that the contact is giving, right? So if I hold a person's bone, let's just say I'm holding an occiput, right? I want to notice without me having an intention of any kind, what is this person's nervous system response in that moment? Does their breathing get more shallow and restricted, or does their breathing get more deep and relaxed and quiet, right? I'm looking for their automatic breathing response without any intervention from me other than simply bringing proprioception to an area. This establishes the
Okay.
autonomic nervous system's response to me touching them, right? Now, we know that proprioception brings motor control. This is a principle, right? So that means that if I am bringing new proprioception to something that needs it, something that has previously lacked proprioception, then I'm going to increase motor control in that area. And as a
Okay.
result, I'm going to increase autonomic parasympathetic tone, right? So I'm going to send the autonomic nervous system in the direction of parasympathetic engagement. If this is an area that the body has previously lacked proprioception, but now it needs that proprioception, okay? So, scenario, let's say I hit my head, right? I have a concussion, right? And then I bring touch to the place on my head, okay? And now my breathing is getting more relaxed and open and even. That means that previously I lacked proprioception here due to my trauma. And now, by increasing proprioception here, my autonomic nervous system is finding relief. This is not a concept that you are a stranger to, but we know that if I smacked the back of my head, multiple things can happen. The brain is like a piece of jello. It sloshes forward and then back, and it reverberates inside my cranium, right? It
Mm,
just so
yeah.
happens that I could have an internal concussion up here in the front from my brain slamming into the front of my frontal plate here, right? Okay. So, what if the worst part of the concussion in that scenario was actually up here? Where do I need the proprioception first and most? Is it back here where I got hit, or is it up here where the problem is worse? Well, it turns out that I actually might need the proprioception first and most in a priority up here. Well, what happens if I am giving proprioception back here, but this is not where I need it the most? I actually need it up here the most. My autonomic nervous system knows this. So then I could be putting my hand back here, and instead of my breathing getting more opening and relaxing
Mm.
and quiet, my breathing could get more shallow and sharp and restless, and I might hold my breath, right? These are all signs of sympathetic autonomic engagement, right? We don't want
Yes.
this.
Okay.
This is not helpful, right? So, putting proprioception in a place where the body does not want it at that time is counterproductive and unhelpful. So, if I put my hand here and I notice that the breathing is getting shallow and restricted and breath holding, this is a sympathetic response, and I need to take my hand away immediately. It's not
Right.
helping.
Right.
And then I will find somewhere else and be like, oh, this is actually what's giving the parasympathetic response. This is the place that I should be giving the proprioception. Okay. Do you see how I'm
Right.
using them and their breathing as the indicator and not my finger right away?
Yes.
Finger
Yes.
is very secondary, right? Because finger relies on my body, whereas I want to rely on their body. Now, I
Right.
can use my finger to confirm to myself what I am observing. Okay. So if I sense
Okay.
that they are going into sympathetic distress, I can check with my indicator. I should not be here. Yes, Megan, you should not be here. Please leave now. Right. So I can use
Yeah.
my indicator for confirmation of what I am sensing, but really their body should be the primary indicator in a craniosacral setting. And that is pretty important because I should not be making any corrections in an area where this person is getting more sympathetic by me being there.
Right.
Now, why would somebody be more or excuse me, why would somebody be more sympathetic, more in fight or flight? Why would they be more sympathetic if I was supplying proprioception to anywhere? Well, we both know that you can have in neurokinetic therapy language facilitated and inhibited, or sometimes we use the terminology compensating, right? One part is compensating for another part which is not able to work correctly. Okay. If
Yep.
you supply more and extra proprioception to a compensatory facilitated area, you are just upregulating, increasing that compensatory mechanism. You're making the
Right.
overworked area work even more. Your nervous system hates that. It says, please stop. I'm
Yeah.
already working so hard here, right?
Yep.
So then going back to the document.
Yeah. So before that, so before you,
Yes.
yeah, so that was a good intro to that. Before you go back, so when 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 should you go to the cranium to do cranial work? Like for you, where when is it indicated for you?
Yes. So that's a good question. Uh, I personally start as far away from the cranium as possible because I want to be the least threat possible to the nervous system that is on my table in front of me, right? I want them to be feeling as safe as possible, right? Okay. Now, I don't know about you personally, but I personally do not feel very safe right off the bat if somebody is touching my head. Very nervous. Very like it takes so much trust for me to let somebody touch my head, right? And actually, ironically, I actually don't love it when anybody touches me in general. So if I trust them to touch me at all, it takes even extra trust to let them touch my head, right? So touching the head, like this is such a vulnerable place. I do not want to start there.
Mm.
I want the nervous system to feel so safe and like I respect that person's boundaries so much that I usually start at their feet. They're laying on a table. Their feet are not under load they are not doing work at that point in time. They do not need their feet to survive at that point in time. So I just go down and I introduce myself to their nervous system through their feet. I only avoid this if this particular person on my table has a fear of having their feet touched, which is absolutely a thing that happens in probably about 1 out of 20 people. They absolutely hate their feet being touched. So I always ask before I even touch their body. I say, hey, is it okay if I touch your feet? Now, most of the time, they're like, well, yeah, sure. Like, that's very non threatening. That sounds great, right? Um, but some people are like, no, don't touch my feet. Okay, that's fine. Is it okay if I touch your shins or your knees? Is that okay? Yes, that's fine. Okay. So I start as far away from the head as possible and least threatening as possible. I want their nervous system to get familiar with my touch, with my hands, before I get anywhere close to their central nervous system. So I'm starting at the periphery. I'm starting as far away as possible. So starting at the feet, right? But then if they
Yep.
don't like the feet, then maybe up the legs. If not the legs, then maybe I will touch their hands, right? I will hold both
Mhm.
their hands in my hands, right? And
Yep.
then oh, looks like your power came back. So,
No, right. Actually, I'm using my ring
oh,
light.
okay.
It's a ring
Yeah,
light.
yeah.
So
Um,
let me set it up here. I think it's
yeah,
better.
sure. But so I typically will start by touching their feet and working my way up. I'll kind of like use compression along their legs into their knees and their upper thighs. Now their nervous system says, okay, I know these hands. I feel safe. This is okay with me. This is fine. Then I start at the bottom of their central nervous system. I never start with a cranial hold. I almost always start with a pelvis hold. The only time I
Okay.
don't start with a pelvis hold is if I think perhaps this person might have a history of sexual assault or this person feels very uncomfortable with their pelvis, right? If I think that is possible instead of the pelvis, I will hold the lumbar spine, the low spine, and the low back. But I'm still
Yep.
starting away from the cranium, away from the brain. I'm still talking to the brain from a distance, respectfully saying, hi, will you let me work with you? And then as this person relaxes, as I work from the bottom of their nervous system up, then eventually I get to their cranium. Sometimes I spend time on their pelvis, their thoracic spine, their low spine, and their neck. And then eventually I will come up and I hold their head. The only time
Okay.
I start by holding somebody's head is if they are holding their own head in pain. They're like, oh, right. They're holding their own head. They clearly want and need their head to be held. In which case, then I will start by asking them if they would like me to hold their head. Usually the answer is a very big, oh, yes, please, would you help my head? Right? But I'm not going to start there. unless it's very obvious that their nervous system would like me to start there.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
So I
that's
don't
okay.
know
I
if
think
I
that's,
ever
yeah.
told you about this, but when I was little, when I was a child, my parents were in the United States military, and sometimes they would get deployed, sent away to other missions and countries. And we used to stay with my grandmother. And my grandmother owned a ranch, and she raised horses. And she also took in horses that had bad tempers and were sold for cheap because their owners were like, I can't work with this horse. And so my grandmother trained horses, and she taught us to train horses. And to train a horse, they are 2,000 pounds and much bigger than us humans. To train a horse, you have to convince them of two things: you are not a threat to their safety, and also you can keep them safe. Those two principles. Don't be a threat. Also, I can keep you safe. That's how you train a horse. And that's also how you work with a human. I'm not a threat to
Yes, yes.
you, and I can keep you safe.
Yeah. Right, right.
So, did you have any questions from all that?
So, how about if you're doing like emotional work or limbic work, do you always go to the cranium? Do you just do a cranial correction, pair something in the cranium?
That's a good question. So, the entire reason that I brought Jordan Terry to Philadelphia to teach his courses and hosted him multiple times is because at that
Mm,
particular time in my career, I did not
mm,
have good psycho-emotional corrections. And I knew that a great deal of psycho-emotional correction could happen via the spine and the central nervous system. And I understood that human beings hold a great deal of their psycho-emotional load in the structure of their central nervous system, the cranium, the vertebral column, the pelvis, and the rib cage. So it is a very appropriate place to assist with psycho-emotional corrections. Um, However, I since that time I have sort of like added to that, and I find that
mm,
we cannot. How do I put it? Let's say for a moment that a person has a struggle in their psycho-emotional life that they have been
mhm,
ignoring, not dealing with. This is how their nervous system brings it up to them. In fact, I met with one of my very best friends for lunch yesterday, and we sat down, and I have known this man for many years. And we sat down, and he said, Megan, I think I know why I keep having low back pain. And I have told him many
mhm,
times that his low back pain actually has nothing to do with his structure, cause it's not. I already tested many times, and he knows. And I go, well, where is your low back pain coming from? He goes, I really did not want to admit it, but I think it's because my marriage is dead. And he was so
mm,
sad. And I was like, I'm so sorry, Josh, but congratulations that you have finally been willing to face why your back is hurting.
mhm,
So, since he is willing to face the facts, I am very easily able to work with his low spine. Now, I have worked with his low spine many, many times in the past. That's why I have told him, I said, Josh, this is not this is not structural. This is psycho-emotional. And I could make
mm,
him feel better temporarily. Like I could use craniosacral to make him feel better temporarily. And he would go home and he's like, "Oh, thank you so much. I felt so much better for weeks after that." But every time
mm,
it would come back because it was not structural, it was psycho emotional. And he was not willing to face the fact that his marriage was falling apart.
mm,
Well, now he knows his marriage is falling apart and his low back
mhm,
is not hurting him anymore. But he is very sad.
mhm.
And so
Right.
now his chest hurts. So
Mm,
it will be up to him to bring proprioception to the feeling of sadness in his chest. He has been working with me for many years, and he is actually a very smart and wise colleague of mine. So he knows what he has to do. It's not for me to do it. But so
Mm,
when I work with psycho-emotional correction in the central nervous system, yes, we can make temporary corrections that do help a person psycho-emotionally feel better. But until they are
mm,
willing to be to put proprioception around the actual emotional issues that are driving it, and then personally deal with those emotional issues, no amount of craniosacral will actually change the root problem. We can just make them feel temporarily better, which is like any kind of body work that doesn't address the root cause. Not different. So, on the one hand, I was a bit frustrated when I figured that out because I was like, I went to all the trouble of learning this. But on the bright side, craniosacral therapy can be an opportunity. It offers somebody an opportunity that they did not have before. So, in other words, when I hold Joshua's chest or when I hold his low back, he has an opportunity to deal with the problem. Whether he chooses to do that or not is not in my power, but it is an
mm,
opportunity that he might not have had otherwise. He might have just walked around thinking that his low back pain had to do with like bad shoes or something
mm. Okay.
instead of his poor marriage.
Yep. Right. Right. Ah, well, Mark, that's something interesting. That is something interesting, really.
I am sorry, it does not deliver more magical solutions than that. But one of the things that I have learned after many years of psycho emotional therapy training, and that is that all of that training cannot do the actual work for the person. It can simply
Right.
provide an enhanced opportunity for the person to do that work for themselves. So even with hypnosis, people come to me for hypnosis and I say, "What do you want
Mm,
to work on?" And somebody will say something like, "My relationship with my son is so bad." And I will be like, "Oh, well, tell me why it is so bad." "Well, he says all these mean, terrible things to me." I said, "Okay, but why does this disturb your life the way that it is disturbing your life? You cannot control what that person thinks." And really, what that person is codependently enmeshed with her son. I'm like,
mm.
you are not your son, and your son is not you. His thoughts are not you, and you are not his thoughts. So where is this
Right.
actually
Right.
coming from? And it is actually coming from this poor lady. Her parents took no interest in her whatsoever growing up. They ignored her. They did not care about her. They neglected her. And she felt very alone. So when she had her children, she wanted to be the opposite. She wanted to make sure that they always felt never alone. She held them too tightly. And so her relationship with her son was not about her son at all. It was actually about how abandoned she felt by her own parents. That's where her
Right.
actual
Right.
problem that we had to bring proprioception to. So even hypnosis is literally just bringing proprioception to where is the problem actually? Is it with your son? No.
Right. So does that mean I don't need to worry so much about or learn so much about the cranial work?
Well, I think the craniosacral work is one of the most practical and important work to do personally.
Mm,
Um, I use it as part of my assessment all the time because craniosacral work does a number of things. It brings proprioception in the central nervous system to the places that we lack it. We are not even able to find emotional proprioception if we cannot get physical proprioception in our central nervous system. So if
Mm,
Josh could not get proprioception in his low back, then he would not have the opportunity to see that this is actually an emotion of denial about his marriage. So it is
mm,
extremely profitable in that sense. Craniosacral, another
right.
craniosacral assessment that was very helpful. I had this lady come in and she says, I have the worst headaches. And she always held her head. So one day I didn't
Mm,
do anything other than hold her head for a whole hour. I made no corrections. I just was there to bring
mm,
proprioception, right? And she said, oh,
mm,
please just hold my head. It feels so good when you hold my head. I said, okay, well, I'm making $200 an hour, so I'll just sit here and hold your head. No matter to me. This is about you, not me. And the whole time that I'm holding her head, she's talking about how her husband beats her, how her husband yells at her, how her husband
mm,
degrades her, how her husband and finally, I'm just sitting there letting her emotional proprioception happen, right? And finally, I just said, is this really working for you? I mean, here in the United States of America, women can divorce their husbands. It is quite legal. Is this working for you? And she just shut up and she said nothing and she just thought for the rest of the hour. Silence. I was like, oh boy, I think I made her mad, but that's okay. So she left and I did not see her for a year. I was like, oh, I really must have made her mad. She never came back. Then she gave me a call about a year later and she said, I just wanted to let you know that I divorced my husband and moved to Texas and I have not had a single headache since. So
right.
I did not even do corrections. It was literally just
Mm,
bringing proprioception into the parts of her central nervous system, literally so that she could think. In her body, she did not have proprioception up here. Her headache was telling her how much she did not have proprioception up here. She was just feeling. She was feeling so angry and so sad and so
mm,
degraded and so wounded.
mm,
She's feeling, feeling, feeling. No proprioception to think. Is this working for me? That is where she needed it. She needed somebody to help her think. Is this working for me? Well, we brought proprioception to her head and she could think. And she said, actually, I can move to Texas. And so she did. And she has never had a headache since.
right.
In Josh's
Mm,
case, he needed to
mm,
feel. He's very good at thinking and rationalizing, but not good at feeling. And if you run away from what you're feeling, then you won't actually know what's true for you. So when I provided proprioception to the place where he was needed to feel, then he
mm,
got it. So craniosacral is incredibly useful. It is incredibly
yep.
important, I think, but it is not so much a fix as it is an opportunity of proprioception for somebody to decide what they need to do with
Mm,
themselves.
right. I get that. Um, how about for example, we have bottom up, top down.
Say that again?
Like we have bottom up, bottom
Yes,
up,
yes.
top
Bottom up,
down.
top down. Yes,
Yeah, and this can happen also in the structure. For example,
yes,
you could
absolutely.
have a neck issue, and then you walk on your feet, and then that fixes your neck.
Yes, absolutely.
So, uh, can it be the reverse? Like someone has a knee issue, foot issue, and then you work on the cranium, and that
Oh,
fixes.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. A very easy example of this is actually in my own body. Um, I needed to move residents to a new house this spring, and we did not have very much time to get it done. And so it was very hectic, and I carried many heavy things. And I ended up hurting my back and hurting my hip. And I personally am a person who has hypermobility, meaning that my ligaments have too much laxity. Okay. My
Mm,
ligaments have too much laxity and are not stable enough because all of my life as a woman, I have not produced enough progesterone compared to estrogen. So, estrogen has a mobilizing laxity effect on joints, and progesterone, which is the opposing hormone in women, has a stabilizing effect on joints. Okay. Now, in
mm.
the first half of a woman's cycle, she should produce estrogen. And in the second half of a woman's cycle, her estrogen should drop and she should ovulate, drop an egg, and then her progesterone should rise for the second half of
Yep.
her cycle. And then at the end of the
Mm,
28 days, both of our hormones drop and we have a menses, a period. And so all of my life, I have not been good at ovulating. I don't produce much progesterone. And as a result of all that estrogen, all of my ligaments are too lax. And that's part of why I lift weights and do so much movement stabilizing, because that helps my muscles take over for my ligaments. But I injured myself. I injured my low back. I injured my hip. I had some problems in my foot. And a lot of that was coming from the stress of the move, like the way that we had to move and the relationship stress that I was having with my partner at the time, that stress affected my sphenoid and my vestibular system. And because my vestibular system and my two temporal bones and my sphenoid were not well regulated, I injured myself. The correction does not happen down here. My corrections that have massively helped me to heal are all cranial and vestibular. So every morning before I lift weights, I lay on the mat and I work on my own cranium. And then I use rolling and head extension nodding to stabilize my vestibular system and calibrate it. And then I go do my stabilization exercises, such as leg press and hip thrust, and so on and so forth. And all of my joints line up and stabilize beautifully. So all of the
Right.
corrections
So,
happen up here, but all of the solutions are happening down in the body.
right. So do those corrections happen on a structure level?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
the problem is stress driven. So I make
Mm,
corrections appropriately up in here to meet the need, but also it would not work up here if I did not do my own emotional work. I still have to acknowledge the emotions and the mental struggle of what is happening with my partnership, what is happening in regards to the financial stability of the partnership, moving, all of those things. I have to actually deal with that. Or anything that I do up
right.
here is very temporary. It will not work.
Really?
Not very well,
Uh, so
anyways.
so can that correction happen independent without any psycho-emotional stuff going on?
Um, I think that it can temporarily hold, but it will not stay.
Okay.
So
So,
I tried making some of those vestibular corrections a few months ago before I had done my psycho emotional work, and it helped a little
mm,
bit, but it kept sliding out of place.
okay.
It would go back to its dysfunctional pattern. And that's when I knew that I had to do my own work so that it would hold. I
Oh,
already knew
so
that.
so basically the more longer lasting solution is to work on your stuff.
Yes, that is the long lasting solution. Your nervous system is
Mm,
too smart. It will not be ignored. You can be like, oh, nervous system. I see this dysfunctional physical manifestation of this psycho emotional pattern. I'm going to just change the structure. And your psycho emotional pattern is like, oh, but you have not changed me. So I will just come right back stronger.
Okay, okay.
It is
So,
sort of like taking painkillers, right? You understand the
mm,
concept of pain receptor sensitization, right? When we take
yes.
painkillers, we're trying to trick the nervous system. We say, "Oh no, nervous system, you're actually fine." When actually those nociceptors are going off for a reason. Those nociceptors are saying, "Hello, I need proprioception down here." And when we take a painkiller, we say, "Oh, maybe not." Right? And so then after a while, the nervous system gets louder and louder until a person has to take so much pain medication and then it stops working.
Right.
And now they are in
Mm,
incredible pain. Whereas if they had just
mm,
not taken the painkiller and listened the first time their nociceptors told them that something was wrong, they probably could have dealt with the problem at a much smaller scale.
mm. Right. Yeah. I think I'm getting it now. I'm getting that.
So I do see
So,
some people in my office for regular craniosacral. They come back and they're
mm,
like, my pelvis still will not stay in alignment. And I'm like, well, you still are not doing your work around your identity.
mm.
Our sense of identity does live in the pelvis. If we were to think about this very broadly, please understand this is slightly reductionist, but broadly,
Mm, mm,
our pelvis is where we know who we are. It's the root of the central nervous system. Even if you look at a
mm.
picture of the central nervous system, you can think of all those nerves ending down at the bottom of the spine like roots of a tree, right?
Right.
So, this
Yeah.
is the root. This is where we know our identity of who we are. This right here is where we feel things. This is also where we receive the feelings of others, right? If somebody is angry at us, my chest hurts. If I am
Mm,
angry, my chest hurts, right? This is where my feelings happen, right? And this is where my thinking happens. Okay. Thinking
mm.
can be helpful, like the lady who needed to leave her husband, or sometimes
Yeah.
thinking might not be helpful if thinking is not the solution to that problem. Sometimes
Mm,
we can
mm,
rationalize our way around something we do not want to see down here or down here. Some people are
mm,
afraid they cannot have the capacity to hold their feelings. So they would rather not feel their feelings here. They would just like to think about other things up here. Right? But if we
mm,
do not know who we are, or if we do not like who we are, then we ignore this down here. We cannot feel our pelvis. We cannot place proprioception down here. And so people who often
right.
have lower body problems, pelvis down problems, I often find that they are not rooted. They do not know who they are. They are identified by something else. The person in my practice with the most pelvis problems has no idea who he is. He hates his family. He thinks they're losers. He hates most people, actually. He thinks most everybody is losers. He is a right wing extremist. He identifies with some very fringe right wing politics in our country. And he uses it
Mm,
as an excuse to hate everybody else. But these emotions, these strong, big emotions that we aim outwards, are reflections or mirrors of what we think about ourselves. So the
mm,
more I hate
right.
others, actually, the more I am hating myself. The more I learn to accept me and love me, the more I can learn to accept and love other people.
Mm,
So his expression of hatred to everyone outside himself is also an expression of hatred towards himself. And he does hate himself.
okay.
He's
Yeah,
very
sure.
prideful and arrogant. And every time he is talking badly about somebody else. It's almost like he is talking badly about himself. So his pelvis is never in one piece. It doesn't work, and his legs always have problems. And I say, Michael,
Right.
until you learn to who you are and to accept who that is, you are going to have these problems.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I get it. So by the way, so the notes I sent you, I just got them from ChatGPT.
Say
They're
that
not
one more
my notes.
time.
So I got the notes I sent you about the cranium. I got them from
Yes.
ChatGPT.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I was like, give me a summary of on how to assess and treat everything. So it brought everything like that. So
Okay.
it's more general information. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So,
Right.
do you want me to go through the document now?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me pull it up. Okay. So, in the top section on point number 3, where it says retest the indicator, if it strengthens that cranial bone is likely a driver, if not, move on. I would just erase that. I think that's not helpful. And you can understand
Yeah.
why I think that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see here. General notes, clients should be supine in a quiet place. I agree with that. That's nice. You apply light sustained contact, not mobilization or forcing. Yes, completely agree. Um, hold for 2 to 5 minutes or until you feel a tissue energy release. Um, no, this sounds like a waste of time completely. Actually, I will hold until I get an autonomic nervous system response from that
Mm,
person, either accepting me into this body part or telling me, no, I don't want more proprioception here. And then please move on and use your sense of problem solving to find where you need to go next. You already understand mapping, so I don't need to teach you that. Use
yeah.
breath as a cue. Go ahead.
So on the on using breath, so if I'm holding somewhere, do I look at their breath to see how it's moving up and down? Do I ask them
Yeah, so
how is
so
your
yes,
breath?
communicate. Yes, communicate. Bring their
Mm-hmm.
awareness to their breath. The more awareness they have about what is happening, the easier this happens. If they're just like
Right.
letting you do all the work, but they're not paying any attention, where do you think their proprioception is? Not there.
Yeah, yeah, right.
They are just dissociating. Literally the
Yeah.
opposite of what we are trying to happen, right? So
Mm,
instead, I want them to be very involved in the process. I say, hey, when I hold you here, does this make
mm-hmm.
you feel more relaxed and open?
Mm,
Or does this make you feel more tight and want to hold your breath? And then they are like, oh, well, that's interesting, Megan. That feels very good and relaxing. Could you
right.
please stay there?
Um,
They're telling me, right? So now I have their nervous system being fully engaged in the process. Now my nervous system is going to mirror their nervous system. And now my breath is going to automatically have the opportunity to match their breath. And now I am waiting for my own nervous system to tell me when I am done here. I don't know how much adaptable polarity you have picked up on at this point, but when you put your fingers in two places to pair them, have you ever noticed that after a while, either one or both of those places is done? It's like finger
yep.
magnets. You hold it there for a while, and then your nervous system says, okay, I'm bored. We're done with this part. And maybe one hand is still very attached, but the other hand is like, okay, all done, right? There is a sense of
Mm,
done, right? I will stay until there is a sense of done. And
mm,
I will not leave until that's done. But then
yep.
when it's done, usually they are going to, oh, I might have one. It's very clear in my
Mm,
nervous system if you're paying any attention. And then we go on. So that could take 20 seconds. That could take
mm,
5 minutes. To be
yep.
honest, I've never had
Yep.
something take 5 minutes.
Sure.
uh,
How about the idea of having of, getting a double pulse in
Yeah, so I think there's two different pulses that a
mm,
person can feel, okay? The
yeah.
first pulse, well, three pulses actually that a person can feel. The first pulse that I think most people would notice if you're paying attention is the cardiac pulse, right? You can feel the
Yeah.
blood underneath your hands if they are alive, hopefully. Then there is the cerebrospinal fluid pulse. This is much more difficult to feel, but I think if you pay attention to it, you might feel it. I don't see it as super important to feel that pulse because I am not guided by the pulse of the cerebrospinal fluid. I am instead guided by the autonomic nervous system telling me, please stay here or we are done. That is the ultimate guide, right? So, that being said,
Mm,
while I am staying there as long as their nervous system would like me to be there, if I am busy observing, I might still notice the cerebrospinal fluid pulse. It is feelable if you have the hands for it. The third pulse, which I think a person can feel if they have the hands for it, is the electromagnetic pulse. This is something that I can feel if I am properly tuning into my own body and meditating. And this is something I can also feel off of my client's body when I am properly tuned in and feeling. Have you ever taken two magnets and taken like two positive poles and tried to push them together and feel the bouncy feeling that happens when you try to take two of the same pole of a magnet and push them together? Have you ever felt that?
yeah, like that bouncing. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
That is what the pulsing of the electromagnetic field feels like if it happens to visit you. That is the result of a very well aligned parasympathetic system that is happening. It's not an expectation that I lay on a client who is
Mm,
struggling to live their best life. So I
mm,
don't have big, high expectations of it to happen. That being said, sometimes it does happen. How wonderful. That person is experiencing great personal alignment. Good for them.
yeah. Sometimes, how about sometimes when nothing when none of that comes, like
Yes.
I'm holding for some time, but I can't feel any pulsing at all.
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
So that pulsing definitely can be directional. It can help my hand float in the direction that it needs to. That can be very
mm,
helpful. So I do pay attention to the pulsing and I let it be information that is guiding me, but it's a part of the autonomic nervous system response. So if the autonomic
yeah.
nervous system is getting very parasympathetic about it, we're going to feel some of that pulsing. At
Right,
the
right,
same
right,
time,
right.
I'm not going to rely on or require the pulsing. I'm going to pay attention more to the breathing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so helpful. Yeah, that's so helpful. Getting them involved, asking them, does this make you feel more calm, more relaxed, or more tensed up? I think that's
Yeah.
a good question to ask. That's a good question to ask. Yeah.
Yes. I especially
Mm,
ask them to please observe their sense of breathing. Because sometimes people do
right.
not know when something makes them feel more relaxed or more tense. They don't have enough awareness to even feel that. But if you
Okay.
ask them to notice their breathing, they start to notice some of the more mechanical aspects of that. They're like, oh, there's less air. Oh, there's more air. They can notice that.
Right.
And once they start to make the association, oh, more air feels better, less air doesn't feel so good, right? Now they are
Mm,
starting to make connections, but we cannot take for granted that everybody has those connections because actually many people do not.
yeah.
They're like,
Right.
you'll be like, does this feel better or worse? And they're like, I have no idea. I'm like, okay, well, don't worry about whether it feels better or worse. Just tell me about your breathing. And then they're like, oh, it's very shallow now. I'm like, great, wonderful. That's information. We can move on. This is making you feel worse.
Right. Yeah. How about people like people from the school of thought, I think it's mainly from people who do cranial work so much. So who say the cranium rules everything.
Yeah, I think that that is very short-sighted. Uh, the cranium is just a structure, but
Mm,
actually, I think the nervous system rules everything. So if I drop a brick on my foot, my nervous system does not give a shit about my head. It cares about my foot, right? Versus,
yeah,
so
yeah.
like it really depends. And you know, earlier in my career, I did go to see and I got to know Dr. Perry Nicholson of Stop Chasing Pain Instagram fame. And I got to know
Mm,
him, and I was a little bit annoyed at him because, well, for a number of reasons. I don't need to go into all of them. But what he did is he gave me a hierarchy. He said, "This is the hierarchy of importance." And at first, I was so happy because I was like, "Yay, I have the code." And then it was not true. I was like, no, this is not the hierarchy, right? Because in his hierarchy, organs were more important than structure. But what if I broke my leg? Well, now my
mm,
organs are not the priority. My leg is the
yeah,
priority. Or,
right, right,
you
right.
know, what if, and so really I learned that there is no one hierarchy.
Mm, right.
Your the awareness of your mind. So the awareness of your mind is slightly different than your brain, but it inhabits your brain, right? And your whole nervous system. Okay. So sometimes we say that there is like a second brain in the gut because there is so much a concentration of neurons there, right? And we have new
Mm,
neuroscience showing us that the neurons in the gut actually often take precedence over the neurons that are in the cranium. And so then somebody is going to say, well, who is the boss, the gut or the cranium, right? There is no boss. There is simply an awareness in your nervous system. That's the part of you that's alive, right? There is an awareness
mm,
that lives in your nervous system, and some of that awareness is conscious, and some of that awareness is subconscious, right? So sometimes our body knows that something is not okay, but we are mentally in denial, or we refuse to deal with those emotions, right? So we are keeping our consciousness small instead of expanding the consciousness. So we're keeping our consciousness small, but the subconscious, which is still part of the mind, knows what is happening and is saying, "Hi, I need your attention here, please." Right? Now, the consciousness then has a choice. I can pay attention to what the subconscious is asking me, or you can say, "I will ignore this because I don't want to deal with it, and I will go on drinking and taking drugs and womanizing and doing whatever else I want to do to avoid this problem, or taking painkillers, or, whatever it is, right? To ignore what the subconscious is asking for. When we do body work, we are making more of the subconscious conscious. We are allowing the opportunity for the subconscious to inform the conscious of what is happening and what it needs, right? And the
right.
total of both the conscious and the subconscious is the totality of the mind. And the mind is what inhabits the nervous system. And that mind is what determines what is the priority. The mind is smart enough to realize, even if it's in the subconscious, oh, I have a problem in my organ systems. And maybe I have a bad liver because I drink too much alcohol. Well, why do I drink too much alcohol? Because I do not wish to think about how lonely I am. So, do I
Why?
have an
Yeah.
organ problem or an emotional problem? The answer is yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. I get it now. I get that. I get
So,
that. Okay. All right. Yeah. Mm.
I know that's very frustrating. It's frustrating not to have a neat sheet of hierarchy, but also every time somebody comes out with a neat sheet of hierarchy, it sort of makes me
Mm,
laugh and it makes me sad because now they are going to be limited by thinking inside this small box and not paying attention to what the mind is trying to tell them.
mm, right. I get that, really. So, so we're gonna continue, I think, with the sheet.
What's that?
Like we can continue with the notes here.
I'm
Like
so sorry.
anything. I was saying, we can go on with that the notes you're following.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Okay. So going
if
back
there's
to the
anything.
notes. Yep. Going back to the notes. Looks like, let's see here. So use breath. We talked about that. Palpate for
Mm,
release signs, softening, heat, pulse, tissue glide, or still point. I mean, I think we already talked about that in the sense of
yeah.
you can work your way through the nervous system. Um, And by rebalancing the cranium as a whole, especially the occiput and sphenoid. So
Mm,
here's the thing. In an upright situation, so adults like you and me, people who are not babies, right? Yes, we spend some time sitting like you and I are sitting right now. Even in a sitting position, our head is relying on our core and pelvis to hold it up so that I don't
mm,
fall over, right? So my head
yes.
is relying on what is below. Adults
Mm,
also walk around on 2 feet, which means that now my head is relying on my vertebral column, my pelvis, my leg bones, and my feet and my foot bones, right? My head is
mm,
relying on everything below it. So
mm,
when we talk about rebalancing a cranium, we should not be finishing by just touching the head. We should at
right.
least pair the head with the pelvis because that head needs to be working together with the pelvis. So I would never just finish on the cranium. If I am finishing, I typically will use my hands underneath the head and the pelvis, rebalance those together.
Yep.
And then while I
Yes.
am holding the head and the pelvis, I will usually have them use their feet to do shin box. Now they are using their feet. That information is coming through the pelvis all the way up to the head, and they are connecting their feet all the way through to their head. We are
Right.
connecting
Right.
all the chain links together. So now, when this
Mm,
person gets up off the table to walk, their mind has connected all the parts to work together. If
right.
I do something just up at the cranium, I'm making some kind of final change, and it is not connected to the vertebral column of the pelvis or the legs or the feet. Now the brain has to try and recalibrate the entire equation all by itself as soon as this person sits up or stands up. And usually they sit up and they're dizzy.
Yep.
Problem. Yes. I really don't like just finishing on the cranium. That's really not, I think, helpful. I want to make sure that
Mm,
this person is connected from top to bottom and from bottom to top um,
yeah.
before I send them walking on their way.
Right. Right. Right.
So let's see here. And then going into the individual bones. So, occiput, let's see, we've got cradling the head, that's fine. Compress or lift slightly into the decompression. Agree. So, on compression or decompression, you need to feel what the nervous system is asking for. What is the direction of ease? If a person is already compressed and the direction of ease is more compression, then that is the direction I am taking them in. I am not going to try to decompress a compressed person. The decompression is their responsibility, not mine. My responsibility is to take the bones in the direction they wish to go, clearly because they need proprioception in that direction.
Right.
We're looking for visual strain, head posture, autonomic dysregulation, diaphragm inhibition. So it's talking about the fact that occiput dysfunction can lead to these things. Those are all true. Correction, cradle the occiput, intention, decompress inferiorly or allow gentle flexion and let's see here. Follow cranial rhythm, support unwinding, releases. Okay. So I actually do not do this cranial correction personally because, one moment, I would much rather have them do it themselves.
Right.
Again, I do not want my body to be doing that work for them. I want their body to be doing that work. So I'm going to show you the tool that I have those people use. Moment. I use this. Have you seen this in any of my videos? So
Yeah, I
this,
think I've seen it somewhere. I've seen that somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you see how bumpy it is? It's great
Right.
for
Yes.
providing proprioception. So
Right.
if I'm just gonna put this on the floor so you can see what I do here. So I'm going to take this and put it underneath my neck, right in the middle of the curve, so that I can restore my cervical curve. See, good, you can see me, right? So
Mm.
now it is underneath the neck, and I'm going to start rolling my head very gently, only as much as I want to each side. So my body says, yes, I will let you roll all the way to the right. And when I go to the left, my body says, absolutely not. I don't want to go over here. Okay. So I'm letting the client notice this in their own body, right? So instead, I'm going to go in the direction of ease, which is over here. The round shape underneath my neck really allows my head several different dimensions and vectors of rotation. So it allows my head to find the directions that I want to go quite easily in multiple different planes and vectors. So I'm letting this movement unwind. I'm taking this back and forth only in the rotation of degrees that my nervous system wants to go. And it wants to go back to the right and now to the left. I'm not really directing this
Right.
consciously, you understand? I'm just
Yeah.
letting this happen. So I'm going to just keep letting it happen. And it just so happens that before our call today, I had a very heavy workout at the gym. So I'm not super surprised that my nervous system really would like to rebalance what's happening here in my neck and occiput. The other really nice thing about this process is that not only is the occiput balancing itself, but it's doing it in such a way that it integrates the entire top of the cervical spine, which also is giving information to my lumbar spine and my pelvis as I'm doing it. And I don't even have any hands on me, which is great. So all of this is an
Right.
inside job. And as we know, inside jobs last longer and stick better.
Right.
I will often have my client on the table working this out. And I have to tell you, even while I'm demonstrating this, my own nervous system is getting calmer and calmer and more parasympathetic. And then looks like I need a little bit more proprioception up in the occiput. So my occiput is asking for more sensation. Yes, kitty, I know. Go on. My kitty cat is not happy that I'm on the floor, but not playing with her. So now I'm just moving this around to different places in the back of my skull where my nervous system is asking for more sensory proprioception. And right now it's asking for a lot more sensory proprioception in the right occiput. So I'm giving it, and the more proprioception I give this right occiput, the calmer and more breathing, more open my breathing gets. I'm back to the center. Much better range of motion to each side.
Mm,
Remove. And now look at that lovely cervical arch I've got.
yep.
Let's take that range of motion. That looks nice. There we go. And it feels much better. And my atlas just adjusted itself. How
Right.
convenient. See what happened there?
Um, yeah. So, do you have to walk through the sagittal plane? Oh,
So yes, after I have done this, so this is, if you think about it, it's loaded in the sagittal plane with gravity, right? So my head is falling into the ground, right? And
mm,
gingerbread, go away. So my head is falling into the ground with gravity in the sagittal plane. Okay. So it's
okay.
not just I'm getting both I'm getting the frontal plane as I go from side to side. I'm getting the transverse plane in rotation, and gravity is giving me the sagittal plane backwards. Okay. So now I also need
Right.
the sagittal plane in the opposite direction. So hold please, and I'm going to grab my roller. One moment. Okay, so now for the sagittal plane in the opposite direction. You already know about breathing up the spine. And
Yep.
so that is exactly what I'm going to do to integrate the whole nervous system, especially the whole central nervous system. I'm going to breathe in up my spine. And after a couple of good spinal breaths, you know how we were talking about the pulse earlier? Well, I've got my electromagnetic pulse now. How fun. But so then I'm going to take my arms and put them off to either side. And hopefully you can see that my arms are straight
Right.
out in front of me with my fists on the floor. Okay. So what's going to happen is I'm going to let my forehead lay on the floor. I'm going to breathe up my spine. And as I breathe up my spine, as I get to the upper 2/3 of my thoracic spine, I'm going to start pushing through my fists into the ground. Breathing in Breathing out. Breathing in.
Okay.
And I'm articulating each vertebrae up until my head comes up, my eyes look up to take my head up, and then I come back down. You should probably recognize from dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, DNS, the push reflex, right?
Right.
So the
Yeah.
push reflex is the second thing that we develop at like when a baby is doing tummy time. And so what I'm doing in that moment is that I'm connecting my ulnar nerve through up my arm into my shoulder girdle, up through my traps, all the way up my cervical spine to head and neck extension. What this does
Right.
is it stabilizes and decompresses the cervical spine. It helps the cervical spine stabilize the cranium and the occiput. Each hand is wiring up to each side of my occiput, right? And up into my
Yep.
temporals via the fascia of the traps. And so as a result, this also helps me stabilize my vestibular system. It's a very important part of stabilizing the vestibular system. And so, like, while I'm here, I've got each of my fists in the ground. And once I get here, I will turn my head to that side and turn my head to that side. Does it feel equal? No, it does not. This means that I have some stabilization to do between my two sides, but it needs to happen with my hands. Okay. So I'm going to go this way. This is the direction of ease for me. And hold as long as I want to be here. And then I'm going to go to the other side. And that got better. And then I'm going to come back to this side, stay here, push a little bit more. My body's asking for push. Over here, it's easier with better range of motion. And now I'm also correcting an ATNR neck reflex inhibition. See how that works?
All right.
Our
Yep.
head
Yep.
does not operate in isolation from the cervical spine or the upper extremity. In developmental neurobiology, they develop quite literally together. You can't separate the vestibular system or the occipital action from the requirements of the upper extremity, the arms, the thorax, the head, the neck sections. And so, in order to integrate my cranial corrections, I need to integrate them using my prone, my prone breathing and my hands and pushing. And do you see how all that went together? So that's where
Yes.
technically we're leaving craniosacral behind, but I might start with craniosacral to bring the proprioception where it is needed. And now that we have some proprioception, we can bring activation and stabilization to it. Activation and
Right.
stabilization are typically not craniosacral features, which is all fine and good. I don't have to dislike craniosacral therapy just because it doesn't deliver everything in the end, but it is a tool to use along the way, like anything else.
Yeah. I love what you did. I love what you just did. I think
Well,
that's
thank you.
something nice.
I like it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I think it is so calming and gives that relaxing effect to someone's body. So
Yes.
staying on that a little bit, staying on that a little bit. So how do you activate the Noke ligament?
Yes. So you saw me breathe up my spine so
Mm,
that you're going to breathe through the nuchal ligament, but also as I pushed through my hands, this allows me to activate up through, think about the dermatome of the arm, right? So the
Right. Yeah.
dermatome of the arm includes everything from C1 to T2. And so if that's the case, then, or actually C1 to T1. But if that's the case, that means that as I articulate through, like my hands pushing allows me to go C7, C6, C5, C4, C3, C2, C1, cranium into
Right.
extension,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And so it allows my hands to find and sense all of my vertebrae. And I need to
Right.
get that proprioception in my cervical spine vertebrae if I'm going
Yeah.
to appropriately balance my cranium on top of my vertebral column.
Right. Yeah.
So to me, I'm not really so interested in release, as you're well aware, as I am interested in what what connections do we not have between the head and the cervical spine and the thorax, and what connections can we create between the two?
Mm.
I personally find that it is very difficult to bring any of that proprioception to the upper extremity if they do not have good pelvic proprioception and core engagement, being able to breathe
Right.
into the pelvis, breathe up the spine, being able to zip up their core, right? And if you think about it, a little baby is getting a lot of pelvis engagement even before and during the process of when they develop their push reflex. So a little baby lays on its back and kicks its legs, and
Mm.
it gets its diaper changed quite a bit every time it goes to the bathroom. Um, every time it has to pass gas, it's pumping its little legs. I don't know. Have you ever had to care for a newborn?
Yep.
You have had to care for a newborn. Okay.
Right.
Then you know how much that baby's we hold the baby by the pelvis. So their nervous
Yep.
system is getting introduced to the fact that gravity is happening through their pelvis. We don't hold a baby
Yes.
by the neck. We hold a baby by the pelvis, right? We
Right.
support the neck secondarily, but we would never just like
Mm.
hold the baby by the neck, right? That's
Mm.
how a mother kitty cat or a mother dog holds the puppies, but we do not hold human children by the neck. We hold human children by the pelvis. And so the
Right. Right.
pelvis is where their sensation of processing gravity first starts. And
Right.
so I start with a lot of breathing in that supine 90-90 position, and getting that core engagement. Once we get that core engagement, breathing up the spine through the nuchal ligament is much more possible. But I often find that neck and cranial engagement is very difficult without lower body engagement first.
Sure. Right. How important is the nuclear ligament here?
Yes, it's right here.
Yeah. How important is it? How important is it?
How important is it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think it's very important. The nuchal
Mm.
ligament gets very compromised for a number of reasons. I think the biggest reason the nuchal ligament gets compromised is because we are always looking down at screens.
Mm. Mm. Right.
Um, so we have a whole couple of generations that are looking down at their screens with very poor nuchal ligament engagement, strength, like they're just not actually engaged. And so and they're not loaded, and so they don't strengthen. Okay, so that's one major cause. Another thing that I have seen, are you familiar with the developmental physiological phenomenon of hypotonia or low tone. Are you familiar with that? So
Me,
it's
yeah.
like when babies or toddlers, they're too flippity flappity. They're too they're like jelly, right? um their feet collapse, their bellies come forward, their pelvises dump their bellies forward, their heads are like this, right?
Mm,
These are not children that hold themselves up. These are children that just collapse on themselves. Have you seen these children?
yep.
Yes. This is low tone hypotonia.
Yep.
The
Mm,
nervous system is not engaging to hold them up, right? Um,
mm,
this is often a big sign of neurodivergence, autism, ADHD, some mix of the two, other things in there as
yep.
well. And so, as soon as I see these signs in a child, and I work with a lot of children, I tell the parents, at least here in the US, you need to get your child assessed. This child is going to have some challenges, and it is better to prepare for the challenges and get ready to meet them than to be caught off guard and not be ready to meet them.
Right.
Instead, a lot of times what happens is this child has learning disabilities, movement disabilities, psycho-emotional disabilities, and the parents don't really understand. They are not prepared, and they just resent the child. They're angry at the child. They make life miserable for the child, and it is so sad
Mm,
because the child did not ask for that. It's not the child's fault. And so
mm,
I feel it is much better if I can warn the parents ahead of time, hey, your child is going to need some extra attention and some extra care. It's it's not your child's fault, but your child
mm,
is going to have some challenges here, and it's best to prepare for them. And so I do a lot of movement work. Now, I don't know about the culture over there, but over here, parents sometimes they don't want to hear that. They're like, no, my child is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with my child. They're fine. I'm like, your child cannot even open a jar of peanut butter. And they are 12 years old. So there's a problem.
right.
My stepson is 18 years old, and he could not push himself up off the floor. And his
Mhm.
mother is like, there's nothing wrong with my child. And I'm like, your son is really having a hard time. So yeah. So these are exercises that I do. I run
Mm,
all of my neurodiverse children through all of these exercises to help strengthen their intrinsic core and increase their tone.
right.
So
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good
so
one.
let's see
Uh,
here.
yep.
Next question.
Um, for now, let's go on. I have some other questions, but I
Okay,
think we
we'll go
can
back to
just
the document. So
yeah, can
let me
just
see here. Let's see. I have to reopen the document 1 second. Okay. So we talked about the occiput. You understand what I think about decompression.
yep.
Moving on to the temporal bones. Internal or external rotation or slight lift, etc. So, I mean, I think that goes a lot with the correction that I just showed you. Because the
Mm,
correction I just showed you also involves the temporal bones in the transverse plane and the frontal plane, right? When I
mm,
am doing my own corrections of that, I will often put my fingers on my temporal bones and see if my nervous system would like some proprioception there. I'll use my breath to decide if yes or no. when I am working with a client and I have them on the table and I put that little hedgehog underneath their neck, I will use my hands on their head if I need to see what is going on in their temporal bones, but I actually would much rather have their hands on their own head whenever I can. As you know, I teach my
Mm,
clients their own finger magnets. So we're going to get much more reliable engagement that way, if possible. Um, so yes, we can see that it does affect gait symmetry, vestibular issues, jaw problems, pelvic tension. Absolutely, all of that is correct. Let's see here. I will say also for hand position, like, yes, sometimes I will use finger magnets on the temporal bones, but remember how I said sometimes the nervous system likes it better if you go from peripheral to central? I actually will
yeah.
often use their ears. I will work on their ears and notice where their nervous system wants their ear to be pulled, whether I'm pulling from the earlobe or the middle ear or the upper ear. I will use the
Mm,
ear to work on the temporal bones. And
right.
oftentimes their vestibular system is much more comfortable with that, as opposed to me
Mm,
actually touching their temporal bones. That's a little bit more risky. Nervous system does not enjoy that quite so much. Not that I can't,
right.
but I try to use it as a last resort. Let's see here. Releases, vestibular tension, TMJ loading, lateral fascial lines. Yes, absolutely. All those things are true, as well as the gallbladder line in traditional Chinese medicine. Parietal bones. Yep, you already know how to palpate that, I think. Let's see here. Yes, upper thorax restrictions, breathing patterns, etc., etc. Let's see here. Gently decompress superiorly or allow lateral spread. Wait for softening or pulsing beneath your hands. Global fascia tension. So, first of all, we could have a top down problem where the person's rib cage is not responding well because of a cranial problem in the parietals. This is especially possible if there has been a concussion. Um, but oftentimes, I would much rather approach parietal problems through the rib cage, especially if the rib cage is a driver, which it most definitely can be. So I'm going to find out, is the rib cage the driver or is the parietals the driver? You already know how to map, so you can find that. If the rib cage is the driver, then that's what I'm going to address and then come back and check the parietals. If the parietals is the driver, then yes, I find that decompression in the upward direction can be very helpful.
Mm,
However, some people like to try to spread the parietals almost like you're cracking open the skull. I have
mm,
never found the nervous system to be okay with this. I've never seen a single body that feels okay pulling this apart, or even putting hardly any pressure on the midline. The midline is such a major nervous system, energetic system. It's like your energetic spine. Think about like jumping up and down on somebody's spine, probably like a terrible idea. I feel kind of that same way about this suture right here. I find that if we want it to decompress, you can decompress the suture between the parietals like so. It's almost like we're going to take the lid off of a box, and I'm just bringing it up. And that does feel quite nice.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. But unless you are very strongly told by that person's body to get up in here, I would potentially treat this area with great, great respect.
So, eh, does skin move along with uh the cranial bones? Like how?
Does he move along the cranial bones? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Most definitely.
Of course, I'm used to I'm used to hormone neuromodulating.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so like moving skin different ways, different directions.
Yeah.
So if I'm moving skin, am I also moving the cranial bones in
You
some way like
are
that?
absolutely. Well, it one of the things about dermal neuromodulating, which I have not taken too much training in that, very cursory training, because I am friends with Robert Rex. But you have taken a lot more. So you tell me, in DNM, are you moving in the direction of ease?
Right, right, right.
Exactly. Exactly. So the direction of ease is not going to lead you astray, right? I
Yeah,
will
yeah, it
say,
won't.
like,
Yeah.
I absolutely will use skin and fascia up here, but it's generally in traction. So right now, I have hair to do this with, but I can traction this whole upper section around that suture. Feels great. Like this, apparently I need to go this way today. But it feels great to traction this in the direction of ease, right? But it's always away, not
Mm,
right. Oh, that even felt
yeah,
terrible. Up we go. All right.
yeah.
Seriously, try putting your hand above your head and see how it feels to have a downward intention. How do you enjoy that?
Putting downwards, it feels restricted putting downwards.
Yeah, restricted.
Yeah, but feels easier pulling up.
Yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it's easier taking upwards than downwards
Yes.
or even sideways. So upwards, if
Yeah.
it has better movement.
Yeah. Yeah. So I find the only time that somebody often needs like some kind of cap or hat or like hovering intention up through here, um, they do not feel safe in their own energetic container. They want somebody else to be their energetic container. Think about a little
Yeah.
baby in its mother's womb. The little baby is perfectly safe, living its best life inside of
Yeah.
mummy. Mom is the womb, right? So the baby has this pressure on its head and then it feels safe. But then
Right.
out in the world, the baby extends back and then comes forward, and their whole nervous system has to come to the understanding that mom is no longer the same kind of container. Now, the first thing we do as
Mhm.
soon as a baby comes into the world is put it directly on the mother. That is what should happen. Okay. The reason we put it directly on the mother is so that the baby's nervous system knows that even though it does not have the same container of the uterus, mom is
Mm,
still the container. This helps the baby feel safe. But instead, if you just put the baby on a table, the little baby hates that. Their nervous system is 1,000% sympathetic. It has no container and no idea how to generate its own container. Sometimes
right.
little babies are very sick and they need to go to the neonatal ICU in the hospital. And so those nurses will hold those babies as much as possible to give the baby a sense of safety. And sometimes they will put the little babies together in the same bassinet so that the baby can
Mm,
feel the other baby is there. These babies have better clinical outcomes. These babies survive at higher rates. The
right.
baby cannot survive without some form of other presence to create a container with. Now, what happens is sometimes human beings grow older and become adults, and they have never yet figured out how to make their own container. They consistently
Mm,
rely on other people to be their container. This is massive codependence. And if their container
mm,
is acting in a way that makes them unhappy, they get very upset about it. You see where I'm going with
Right.
that?
Yep. Yep.
So these people often do want something here. If somebody's nervous system goes parasympathetic with this tells me they are looking for external container. They need to learn
Mm,
how to make their own container.
right.
At which point I need to bring to their attention that this is a problem. They may not
Mm,
take this very well. That's okay. It is simply the
yep.
truth.
Mm, right.
I have a disabled man who is a client of mine. He is intellectually disabled as well as physically disabled. And he walks around with his hand on his head like this because he does not ever feel safe. And his mother is his caretaker, and his mother is his container. When his mother is in his presence, like if she comes with him to his appointment, no hand on his head. If he comes to his appointment all by himself, like an Uber driver takes him, he comes to his appointment like this. He is in need of a
Right.
container. Now, in his particular
Mm,
case, he is intellectually disabled, and I don't know if he
mm,
will ever be able to make his own container. And that's okay, because some of us are born disabled and some of us are not, and we should be grateful. But there are plenty of
mm,
people who have just as much capability as you or I, and they need to make a choice to construct their container. And if they keep
mm,
choosing not to construct their container, they become a burden on everyone around them.
right. Right.
I had to learn not to be somebody else's container unless I was
Mm,
being
mm,
paid for an hour in my office.
mm,
Outside of
mm.
that, it is not for me to be the container for another adult person.
Yeah. So, last time we did hypnosis, so that was so helpful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so much better with my patients, my clients. I
Yes.
literally don't I literally don't care anymore.
Good.
Yeah, as long as I'm doing the best I can for them. So
Sure.
I leave the issues to them. I don't follow up on their issues or care so much about their own
Yeah.
personal issues.
They
So
will take care of what they need to.
yeah, definitely. Not like I'm seeing a patient who has been in chronic pain for a long time. So she has seen physios and she hasn't got the help she wanted. So she's in so much pain. So she's crying to me, I'm in so much pain. Will this pain never go away? I'm like,
I don't know.
I don't know. So
Mm.
previously I used to be taken up into their own concerns. So
Yeah.
I now begin worrying. I begin feeling bad about it. I'm like I feel responsible for their progress.
Right.
I'm
That
like
does not work.
yeah, yes. I'm like, what if I can't help them? So that it's eats me up so much
Oh, good.
previously, but now
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, be patient, be patient.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
be
that
patient. That's
woman
okay.
asked me, will my pain ever go away? I would have told her, I don't know, because I don't have a way of knowing. I
Yeah.
would
So
encourage her to
mm,
change her relationship with her pain because in that
yeah,
statement, she is showing that her relationship with her pain, she just wants her pain to go away. But actually, pain is trying to tell her something. And she is,
yeah,
instead of being listening to her pain, is just trying to make it to go away, which is the only reason that pain gets louder and worse. So as long as
yep,
she wants her
yep.
pain to go away, it will continue to get worse. But when she starts to accept her pain and be curious
Mm,
about
mm.
it will start to decrease.
Yeah, definitely. And the more important is that I'm not being taken up in our own concerns.
Yeah.
So that's a big win for me.
Yes. Huge
Yeah,
win.
yeah, yeah. I'm at ease here. At heart, I'm at ease.
Good. I'm so happy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I really wanted all along, for me to still be at peace despite having it if I'm working with. So me, I'm okay. I'm at ease.
Good. I'm
Stress.
so glad.
Yeah. So that was super helpful.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Did you want to check in with any of these other bones before we finish up? I don't know that I'm going to have time today to go through all of the entire document.
Yeah, definitely. Are you able to maybe just run through maybe summary, short
Sure.
summary?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just
just
gonna give some basic notes for each of them. So we talked about the
yeah.
parietal bone, talking about the frontal bone. Um, so let's see, palm or fingertips over forehead. Yes, very nice. Gentle upward lift or compression towards posterior cranium. Sure.
Mm,
Looks for visual processing, emotional tone, head flexion extension. Yes, you're using the same rules that we've talked about earlier. You know, asking the nervous system, should I even be here?
yeah,
If I am here, what direction should this be going in? You already know how to
yeah.
do all that. I
Mm,
will say that like for the frontal bone, it really does enjoy being decompressed forward. So just like we talked about lifting a box, like the lid of the box off, the frontal bone also enjoys being pushed forward. So like if I'm working on my own frontal bone, just as soon as I start to decompress it forward and even up a little bit, massive parasympathetic engagement. Love that for
oh,
me,
mm.
right?
Yeah, sure, it does. It does.
Yeah, great. Let's see here. See here. Da, 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 da. Correction. Blah 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 blah. Sphenoid. Um, So in other classes and videos of mine, have I given you the floating sphenoid correction? No? Okay. All right.
Mm,
You
knew
getting the goods
I
from me
knew
today? Let's see
yeah,
here.
I only knew that sphenoid holds, just holding sphenoid,
Okay,
not the
so
floating.
I am going to sit. I'm sitting on a hard surface, so my sit bones are right on the flat surface. My feet are flat on the ground. All of my foot bones in contact with the ground. If there's glasses
Mm,
present, take them off. I'm going to take this center of my palm. If you reach the fourth finger down, the spot that it touches in traditional Chinese medicine, we call this Lao Gong. So I'm going to open Lao Gong. I'm going to put
mm,
each Lao Gong on either side of my head. And my body initiates rocking on my pelvis. So, as you can probably intuit, I'm not self directing this. Oh, good. Two vertebrae just adjusted. That's nice. I'm allowing my sphenoid to take me wherever it needs to find proprioception. Oh, there goes another vertebrae. Apparently, I need a lot of rotation to the right. And because my pelvis and my foot bones are squarely and securely on the ground, my brain has freedom. Ah, there we go, a little bit to the left. To unwind the associations happening between, oh, there's another adjustment. I think that's 5 adjustments so far. Oh, there's another one. So my sphenoid is correcting all the calibrations and associations between my cranium and the rest of my spine and my pelvis, since my pelvis is my firm foundation here. Oh, there's another adjustment. Honestly, it's usually not that dramatic. That was a little extra. And then, of its own accord, it centers me directly above my pelvis. And now I have just calibrated my sphenoid. Yep, wait for your own body to stop on its own. That is the important part. It stops on its own. Okay. So then I would integrate this by walking around, and I feel very grounded and very calm. There is a standing correction version of this. So now with my feet flat on the ground, it's centered. Once again, raise my glasses, open Laogong, put them on the side of the sphenoid. And now I'm calibrating to my feet. And you can see this is much more typical as like this small sway. You can see my body kind of having these small sways to different parts of my feet. And my brain, my nervous system, my sphenoid is just calibrating to what's happening below in my feet. There we go. It's all done. Once again, integrate by walking. So the sphenoid correction is one that I make with every craniosacral and central nervous system correction because I need the sphenoid to connect to the pelvis through the spine and the vertebral column and down into the feet. Now, the first time that somebody is learning about this, especially, a non-anatomically informed client person, I will sit them in the chair and my hands will hold their head. I got
Okay.
very good at doing this for somebody in the sense of my hands will hold their head and we'll go a little bit wherever we need to go, right? And
Mm,
then I can do it in standing too. My hands will hold their head and we'll kind of, go. But then as soon as possible, I teach them to do it for themselves because, as always, an inside job is a better job. And many of my clients will do their own sphenoid correction whenever they need it. If they feel off balance or disoriented or dizzy, anything like that, it will completely correct the vestibular problem. Does that make sense?
right. Yeah. And that's a good one. I love
Yeah.
it. I love that one. So
The
how
point
do you
being
know?
is that the body is the one doing the guiding, not me, right?
Mm,
That's so important, right? Now, it is true that I did learn sphenoid manipulation back in the day when I was taking craniosacral. And I used to just, while the person was laying on the table, I would use my fingers to sort of like feel the sphenoid float into place. But what I dislike
mm,
about that is that even though the sphenoid will totally float into place and it will feel very relaxing on the table, it has no bearing on what that sphenoid actually needs in an environment with gravity. So in an
right.
environment with gravity, I need to put the sphenoid exactly where it's going to be in gravity. Now, a person might not be able to do this in a standing version right away, especially if they have a great deal of vertigo or nausea or things like that. And so sitting is easier on the nervous system. It's less demanding. Plus, it's easier for me
Mm,
to keep them safe, right? So some people, their brain is smart enough to know, hey, I am the container and I need to protect myself and I'm not going to let myself fall. So that's me. My nervous system is totally capable of protecting myself. It's not going to let me fall. And so I'm going to work through those corrections with no fear of falling. But remember how I said
Right.
some people never really learned how to be their own container? Sometimes
Mm,
they show up in your office and they want you to fix all their problems because their problems are just too much for them. And so they want you to be their container. And these people
right.
will absolutely not stop themselves from falling. They have every faith that you are going to catch them. And so I prefer to treat those people in a sitting position. There is less chance of them getting hurt by falling. I can make sure they don't get hurt by falling. Sometimes I will very occasionally accidentally do a standing correction on somebody and then realize that this person has no intention of keeping themselves safe. And so then I will promptly sit them down. So I am going to make them realize that they are responsible for their own safety as soon as may be.
Right. How would you uh how would you count the corrections you're doing? Because you're saying that's first correction, second correction, third correction. How do you get that?
So I will start in the least gravitationally demanding position, laying on the table, right? When somebody lays on the table, you can stick somebody is laying on the table, you can stick something like this underneath their neck, right? At that point, we're not really challenging them much in relationship to gravity. When I flip them over to do their prone extension, right? Uh, their whole body is still basically on the ground or the table, so that's not really a huge challenge in gravity to their body. It's just a little teeny one, right? So I'm slowly
Mm,
ramping up the anti-gravity demands, right? And so after we did some prone pushing, now I'm a little bit more stable. Then maybe after that, I might put them on all fours. That requires a little bit more challenge against gravity, but not as much as sitting. And then eventually we're doing corrections here in sitting, like the sphenoid correction. That's a little bit more challenging, right? Because I could fall. And then,
mm,
standing is the most challenging of all compared to gravity. So when I say like, oh, first, second, third, fourth correction, I'm starting with corrections that this person can digest in a supine position. And then I'm gradually ramping up the challenge to their body and eventually demanding that they integrate these corrections in their gait. Does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah, that's okay.
So, so that's why I said about the sphenoid, on the table, I would much rather use that little hedgehog to have them
Mm,
feeling out their own unwinding on the table, and their sphenoid is going to be part of that process, as opposed to me pushing around their sphenoid on the table. That almost
right.
never works out well.
Mm. Got it, got
So,
it. Okay,
let's
go to
see.
the next.
We've got the ethmoid bone between the eyebrows. So that's basically let's see how they use it. Interesting. So they use the glabella. Hmm. So that's really only a frontal plane correction. Let me see here. So if I'm understanding the notes correctly, it has you working up in here, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and you can totally, this is great if you have really agitated sinuses and so on and so forth. The other way to work with the ethmoid is actually intraorally. So the ethmoid is actually like it's like right back here, right? And so it's right behind here, and it's a vertical bone, right? And so really, to work with the ethmoid, if I was doing it myself, I would reach a thumb inside the arch of my mouth. And you know that ridge right down the center of your palate? Well, your
Yep.
ethmoid is directly above it. And so the two halves of your maxilla come together, but your ethmoid is resting right on
The
the
middle.
suture where, yeah,
Yep.
right where. And so I'll stick my thumb in my mouth and I'll feel along the ridge, sort of like a magnet, a finger magnet. Ah, okay. So I just did an ethmoid correction on myself. So I used my finger magnet to find where along inside I needed to be. I came to the top of the ethmoid and I was like, what direction do you need to go in? And apparently I needed to go into extension. News to me,
All
but
right.
you got to see it. So,
Okay.
um, but you get, obviously with glove on, right? You get your hand in the mouth, you would cradle the occiput, right?
Mm,
Um, and you would work with it that way if you needed to. I find that's more helpful. There are a lot of people who have had facial impacts. Like maybe this person broke their nose in the past. Maybe this person got punched in the face, right? I find like people who have experienced violence on their faces, I often do a lot of facial cranial remodeling. And I will do that facial cranial remodeling number one, after the entire intrinsic core and central nervous system has been roughly balanced and they're roughly integrated. So now they're like real nice and parasympathetic. Then I can start doing facial remodeling. Um, but you would never start there. You would have to get the whole main central nervous system, the cranium, the pelvis, get that integrated. And then face you would have to work on after those things settled. So I actually wouldn't work on a person's face if I could not get some of the relationships between their cranium and their
mm,
pelvis and their vertebral column settled, right? Face is
right.
advanced material. Not that I'm averse to doing it, but maybe this person might not. So, like, for example, I told you about the man who hates everybody and his pelvis always goes out. He loves craniosacral. He asks for it every time he comes in because, of course, he needs it, but he's refusing any of the opportunities that he gets from it. He just wants it to fix him without him doing the work. But also, he used to be in the military, and he was like in the fighting in Iraq. And I know he's had all kinds of violence all over his face, but I won't touch his face because his
Mm,
craniosacral balancing can barely hold on. I would never
right.
rearrange his face. His body would just
Right.
flip out. So,
Right.
let's see here. Zygomatic bones. Yeah, I mean, really, let's see, gentle traction towards the outward canthus of the eye. So these bones are like any other, like you move them in the direction of ease, really. So, but they do love to come out away from the face, almost like taking off a pair of glasses. So if I was doing zygomatic work, now zygomatic work can also be very helpful for dealing with transverse plane issues. So like as soon as I hit my zygomatics, we want to rotate this way. And not very far that way. Oh, there we go. Great for taking care of transverse plane issues in the face.
Mm,
Let's see here. Maxilla, lift and spread. Yes, absolutely. So, a book I highly recommend on reading about like facial bone construction is a book called Jaws. And it is written by an orthodontist and a paleontologist, and it is about the Western degradation of, honestly, the degradation of white people's craniums. Um, so essentially, like, I don't know about your culture, but in our culture, um, number one, a lot of women don't even breastfeed anymore. They don't want to breastfeed because they want to go back to work or they want their breasts to stay like high and perky. They just don't want to deal with it. And so they feed their babies formula, right? And they feed their babies formula from a bottle. And the way that the nipple of the bottle is, the baby does not have to work hardly at all with their mouth to get the milk out, right? And so, really, when a baby nurses on a mother's breast, that baby has to work really hard to pull the milk out of the mom, right?
Mm.
But in a bottle, that's not happening, right? And so, a lot of babies, their jaw, their maxilla is not forming well because eating is how all of this gets formed. And then
Mm.
also in Western culture, we give our babies like very pureed, soft food. It's like a mush, right? We don't give the baby anything to chew. It's only mush. And so we give the baby only mush for a really long period of time, even after they've started getting their teeth. And even once they start getting more and more teeth, instead of making the baby like rip a piece of meat off and chew it with their mouth, we just cut the meat up into really tiny pieces, right? So that the baby does not have to actually chew. We also feed our children a lot of processed foods, like very hyper processed foods. So, for example, chicken nuggets here are very popular with American children. Chicken nuggets are made by grinding chicken to a pulp. And then now this pulp of meat is rolled up into like a ball, and then it's rolled in some breading, and then it's deep fried. And so then the child will bite into the chicken nugget, but there's no meat to tear apart because it was already ground up into a pulp. And so it just sort of breaks apart in their mouth. It crumbles in their mouth. There's no chewing hardly at all involved. Um,
Mm.
the children eat a lot of like snacks like chips and Cheetos, things that have a lot of artificial flavoring and crunch, but the crunch does not, you don't have to work for it. Like if I bite into a carrot, my jaw has to bite off the fibers of the carrot. Or if I bite into
Mm.
some celery, I have to bite through the fibers of the celery, right? But that's not happening in a lot of children's snacks. They eat highly processed food. And so a lot of children are losing their jaw and maxilla formation as they grow older, and their teeth do not come in aligned. So a lot of American children require a lot more orthodontics than they ever used to because we're feeding them such poor food. Um,
Mm.
Now, the book Jaws is mostly aimed at parents of children because it wants those parents to help their children get better access to better food, chewing habits, oral posture, possibly like different bite guards to help their jaws form properly so that we can try to rescue this situation. But I think it's really helpful as a craniosacral practitioner to read that book because it can help us understand where our jaw and maxillary bones are supposed to be sitting. So we should be able to rest. Our oral posture should rest with our teeth touching, not clenching, but just touching, right? And the bottom teeth should be like just behind the top teeth, okay? And your tongue should be on the
Mm.
roof of your mouth, right? And I think about the tongue in thirds. I think about the front third of the tongue, the middle third of the tongue, and the back third of the tongue. All three thirds of the tongue should be sitting on the roof of the mouth. But if we
Mm.
have this malformed jaw issue going on, are a lot of people do not breathe through their nose, they breathe through their mouth. And so at that point, their jaw is coming back here. So their jaw is retracting, right? Instead of the front teeth meeting and the back teeth not meeting, which is what should be, instead their back teeth are clenched, right? This is where TMJ comes from. All these jaw muscles become responsible for holding up the head like this, right? And and we get all of this pressure on the brainstem and all of this pressure on the vagus nerve and all of this like vestibular dysfunction, right? And so really learning how to retrain oral posture and get that tongue up there, allows the maxilla to come upward and spread the way that it should, right? Now, me as a craniosacral therapist, sure, I can stick my hands in their mouth and lift and spread and help these maxilla find where they're supposed to be. And that's fine and dandy. But if this person gets off the table and they have terrible oral posture and breathing posture while they are living
Mm.
their lives, then I have not really done a whole lot for them. So instead, I have trained my clients, how to activate their neck extension and keep their head back here. But this also allows us to then train our jaws to be where they should be, with our lower teeth touching just behind our upper teeth, but basically touching together here in the front, and our tongue holding up our maxilla and holding up our ethmoid. And that is what holds our facial bones in the position that they need to be. But when people are always like looking down at screens and their heads are always like this, right? The body has no choice but to stabilize the cranium on top of the vertebral column by retracting the jaw and tightening up all these jaw muscles. So all these people are like, oh, I have TMJ. This is so tight. I clench and grind my teeth every night, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, yeah, your posture, your oral posture and your cranial posture is not supporting your airway at all. And that's a very stressful thing. And a stressful life can also drive those postural problems, as you're well aware. So, is the problem our stressful life, or is the problem our posture and our food? Well, it's both. So fix both.
Mm. How about how about how do you work how do you work with a tongue tie?
So a tongue tie, I have a tongue tie, and I've been working with my own tongue tie for many years. Um, a tongue with a tie has to be stronger than everybody else. Like my tongue has to be stronger than everyone else. So I
Isn't
do
that
all the same postural work. I do a lot of tongue exercises. You can Google up several helpful tongue exercises with oral myofascial therapy. But yes, there are lots of tongue exercises to strengthen the tongue. And then in addition to the tongue exercises, I have strengthened and trained my jaw and oral posture. And even though I cannot get all 3/3 of my tongue on the roof of my mouth, I can get the front 2/3 on the roof of my mouth. And my jaw is far more forward than it used to be. And I can hold my head up on my vertebral column the way that I'm supposed to, even though I grew up with very low tone.
right?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Okay. So let's see here. Yep, they go into the maxilla lateral spread decompression. Yeah, I mean that's true. It's helpful. Um, Especially helpful for pelvic floor issues. Totally agree with that. But ultimately, to fix that pelvic floor, you're going to have to fix their oral and jaw and head and neck posture. That's like the actual underlying root cause. Um, Mandible. Let's see here. Anterior lateral pressure. Yes, correct. So you probably understand at this point in your career that the jaw is a great compensator. You do know that, correct? So
Right.
whatever else is happening, the jaw will go all over the place to compensate for it. So I don't end up
Mm.
actually treating the jaw a whole lot. Why would
Yes.
I bring more proprioception to a compensator? I try not to do
Mm.
that because that just makes the
Yeah.
system worse. So
Right.
instead, I will treat the cranium and the cervical spine, and then the jaw, if I'm doing my job correctly, should be able to then loosen up, come forward, and hit the oral posture that I'm asking them to hit.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
If for whatever reason they're like, wow, this is a lot of work for me to be here, it's really hard for me to hold my jaw in the proper position, that means I have a lot more work to do in the head and neck first. So it's not that the jaw doesn't deserve treatment, it's that it's a compensator. And if you're treating the things that are driving the jaw dysfunction, then you should see the jaw start to show correction.
Yeah.
Let's see, nasal bones. That's mostly downward and outward decompression. So again, I guess really helpful if you have some allergies, but really it's my nose should come out like this,
Okay.
like so. I might need to do some upward decompression, right? So upward decompression, like so. That one feels pretty nice. There we go. Just cleared my left sinus, which is nice. Let's see here. How you should work with cranial sutures. Listen to the suture, fearful pull or drag in a direction, heat or density, lack of cranial rhythm. Yeah, absolutely agree. But I would rather people use finger magnets to find the sutures that need help because finger magnets are an autonomic direction. Um, I wouldn't necessarily just like go poking around in them. The nervous system does not enjoy being challenged. It especially does not enjoy being challenged in the central nervous system. So I would use your finger magnets to find your sutures. Balancing or decompressing a suture. Hmm. Lateral traction to decompress, slight compression if it feels gapped or loose. No, do not make a decision about whether something feels compressed or gapped or loose. Use your autonomic nervous system cues to decide if you should be there or not. You adding proprioception to the situation will accomplish the correction that is needed. You don't go shoving anything around. That's a terrible idea. Two
Yeah.
bone contact for suture work. Let's see here. Coronal suture, thumbs on frontal, fingers on parietals. Sagittal suture. I will agree with their last statement. Hold in a neutral, non-directive position and let the bones reorganize. Absolutely. It's just that sometimes the nervous system is going to direct you towards a suture and sometimes it's not. That's absolutely irrelevant, to be honest, right? The nervous system is going to direct you to the location where it needs proprioception. So,
Right. Yeah.
how to work with the dura. Indirect gentle approach. You do not pull or stretch the dura aggressively. Truth. The approach is gentle and invitational. The goal is to release dural tension, improve mobility, to support cranial rhythmic movement. Let's see here. Sulcus cerebri, sagittal, tentorum cerebelli, cranial bones, dura base. Yeah, so basically, I assume you understand the anatomy and physiology of the dura. It's like a casing that is surrounding the brain and the spinal cord. The dura can
Right.
get stuck just like any other piece of fascial tissue, to be honest. And so I honestly think the principles of DNM are going to serve you just fine. It's not different here. So if you notice that for whatever reason there is a restriction in the tissue, it's not super
Mm.
important for you to differentiate between whether this is dural or some other form of fascia. You already know how to work in the direction of ease with fascia. As far as like there is a tension and release. You know how like I need to extend a piece of tissue to its full max capacity in order to properly shorten it with good tone. Hamstrings are a really good example of that, right? Let's say that I walked in and I'm like, wow, my hamstrings are so tight. I wish that they would loosen up, right? So, what am I going to do to
Mm.
loosen up my hamstrings? I'm not going to stretch them. I'm going to lengthen my hamstrings right? But I'm pushing the floor down so that I'm getting this eccentric engagement and then pushing through my feet to go ahead and stand up. And oh, look, my hamstrings are much looser because I eccentrically engaged them and then concentrically engaged them, right? And then now that the tissue is active, it's releasing, so to speak. It's not really releasing, it's just finding a normalized tone, right? And the same is true of the dura,
Mm.
right? So now I will say I like to approach the dura again a little bit more indirectly than they do. I use heel punch. So like for me, let's see here. Do a little bit of shin box. And then, do you see how I'm eccentrically engaging that hamstring? This foot,
Yes, yeah.
pushing through the heel, right? This actually eccentrically engages up the entire deep longitudinal sling, all the way up the neck, actually, all the way up to my brain. I'm gonna go
Mm.
this side, do the other side, see what happens there. And much looser on this side. Clearly don't need it on this side, but definitely needed
Mm.
it on the other side. And so
Mm.
you can actually non-invasively address the entire dura of the spine and cerebrum on both
Right.
sides with that. And I would much rather approach it from all the way down there than I would
Mm.
going up to somebody's cranium. Occasionally, I will go up to somebody's cranium after I have gone indirectly. And then, if their nervous system really wants it, I will go ahead and give them use the head in the direction of ease. Um, if their head wants flexion, I'll give their head flexion. Right, that is
Mm.
creating also a
Right.
dural pull and a dural release. But I would never start with the head for the dura. I would definitely start with the like the feet and the pelvis and go up the spine from there. Let's see here.
So
Go
yeah,
ahead.
when is when is dura work mostly indicated? When is it most indicated?
So Dura is usually Dura is usually indicated if somebody has had a surgery where they've had like a spinal tap, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
or maybe they've had a spinal surgery, or maybe they've
Mm.
had a spinal trauma, like
Right.
whiplash in a car accident, or they had a bad fall, right? Where their central
Mm.
nervous system got whiplash. Like those are some places where dural might be indicated. But
Right.
it's almost
Right.
like I find that Dura is also indicated if like there is a persistent deep headache that's like across the forehead. Um,
Mm.
this is that long fascial chain back there pulling on them. It's a cervicogenic headache. Um,
Mm.
let's see here. Tentorum release. Let's see here. I mean, so the tentorum release is pretty much the same as the parietal release. You take the lid off the box, so to speak. Sacral dural pull. Okay, I am not a fan of a sacral dural pull. I used to practice it. I ended up taking it out of my practice. So with a sacral dural
Mm.
pull, a person is laying on the table with their knees propped up and their feet flat on the table, almost like they were going to do shin box. And they lift their pelvis and I reach under and I hook on their sacrum and I pull that sacrum
Good.
out. Yes,
Ah.
yes. I don't love that because I am disintegrating the sacrum from the rest of the vertebral column. Does that sound like
Mm.
a great idea to you?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
No. It does not.
Mm,
I have actually not seen it work out real well, hardly ever. I've had
yeah.
it done to me multiple times. And each of those
Mm,
times, I had to reconnect my pelvis to my vertebral column myself. Not an enjoyable time. So
yeah.
I like heel punch better because heel punch
It's
is
better.
integrating everything from the feet all the way up through the legs, through the pelvis, all the way up the spine to the cranium. So everything should be connected and thus integrated.
Yeah.
So
Heel punch is definitely better. I like it already.
yeah,
It's a
it's pretty
better match.
nice.
Yeah, definitely it is.
So now I just did heel punch and I direct people to do heel punch all on their own.
Mm,
But sometimes
mm,
people are not ready to do it on their own. So I will very gently use my hand to guide them simply through the motion of it, right? Because they might not understand what I am asking them to do, right? So I
mm.
might guide them through very gently through the motion of it. Like I'll be like, and here you go, right?
Right,
But I
right.
am not pulling on them. I
Mm,
am not pulling on them, right? I'm just showing them where to go with my hands, but they
mm,
are pushing through, not me. You see the difference?
right. I like that.
So
I really like that.
yeah, much better dural engagement that way.
Mm, mm. Wow.
Any questions after all that?
No,
You're
I
like
have no questions.
27,
So,
Megan. I have
yeah,
to get going soon, but I hope that that was helpful to your
very,
request.
very, 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 very. I like that. Actually, I think I will share this video with some of my other students. They'll like it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, because it has so much content. It has so much content about how to work safely with the nervous systems, cranial work. Like it has so much content, so much content. I like everything about this. Actually,
Okay,
so I have no questions about the cranium anymore.
great. Because now you understand that the cranium is just another set of bones, like your elbows or your hands.
Yeah, yes, yes. I have no questions anymore about the cranium. And just that we ran out of time. I actually had some questions away from the cranium, but maybe for some other time.
Yes, I think some other time because I have to get going, unfortunately. You are welcome to share this video without payment to your friends.
Yep,
I'm fine with that.
yep.
Please don't sell it. And yeah, that's all I ask. And also, please don't put it up on the internet. I like to maintain my privacy. So
Right. Am I able to share it on
not in a group, not on social media.
okay, no, yeah, not there. Um YouTube
What's that?
on
YouTube? Oh,
YouTube.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm sorry, buddy.
Okay,
Here's
okay.
the thing. People if people find out too much about me, I would have no privacy and no peace ever.
Ah, right, right. So
The other issue is that I am a white, redheaded woman, and a lot of men are predators. You are a good man, so I trust you. But a lot of men are predators, and they can see this video and they will come find me and give me no peace. It has happened, unfortunately, many times before. So I have to protect myself. I know that your
Right.
physiotherapy colleagues, most likely, if you're just like sharing it in a private group chat or something, or talking about it locally, will not come disturb my peace for any bad reasons. But if this were to get on YouTube, you can bet there would be a lot of people who would give me no peace.
Yeah. Ah, right. So basically you're saying
You
I
are
keep this to
absolutely
myself?
welcome to make your own videos of these concepts, and then you can publish those videos. You can just use my name, say, hey, I learned some of these from Megan and it was great, and this is what it looks like. Lots of people have made my concepts into their own videos, and I have no resentment for it whatsoever. In fact, you may recall during the pandemic, Marcus Nash made an entire series on gait corrections that was all me.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was fine with him making his own videos. That was fine.
Ah, right. That's okay. Just that, like personally, um, when I get good information, I don't like keeping it to myself. That is,
Oh, yeah,
right.
I'm the same
Yeah.
way. Here I am giving you information freely, right? I don't think this
Yeah.
information needs to be any big secret. Share it,
Yeah.
teach it, have fun with it. I have no secrets. I'm just saying don't publish it with me in this video and my face
Right.
because
Right.
then
I get that.
then men will give me no peace. So yeah,
I get
make
that.
make all the
Yeah.
videos of all the same things and just be like, yeah, Megan taught me this. This was great. So
Just that I love you. I love your explanations. Like they flow so smoothly. Like they flow just well.
well, that's because I have worked on it in my own body so much
Mm,
that it has become
mm.
very obvious to me. So I find that when I work on my own body, I become a much better teacher of these concepts. If I have not felt it in my own body, I am probably not going to teach it very well.
Right. Ah,
I'm
yeah.
going to
So
let you
yeah,
go. Let me know how your visa inquiries go, and feel free to follow up on questions and see how some of this stuff works out for you.
yeah. That's okay. Um, when do you have when do you have your next uh time off like this?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably October.
What? That's it.
I am very, very busy. I have to guard my time really closely between my work, my workshops, my travel, and taking good care of my partnerships. So I have to set aside quality time for myself and for them. Otherwise, I will not be a very happy person. And only happy people do well with their jobs and teaching. So but yes, we can
Right.
we can find a time in October, and then you get me for a whole month of questions if you can make it over here in November.
Yeah. Definitely.
All
Okay.
right.
All right.
Talk to you later. I'll send you the link with this recording as soon as it comes to me, okay?
Okay. All right.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.